What's going on? My name is Francis, and if you're new to this channel, consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell because I post a video every single day. Check out the website, it's in the description box of this video because I do powerful one-on-one sessions. What we're going to be talking about today is how to never be affected by external situations ever again. Because a lot of us are very affected by external situations a lot, believing that these situations have to affect our mood and our emotional state a lot more than they really have to, because these things to a certain extent definitely have an impact on us. But then a lot of the times we tend to be very absorbed into these things without realizing it, and we're giving them a lot of attention and energy, a lot more than necessary. And so this can create a lot of suffering in our lives because we're just so attached to these things that we don't necessarily need to be attached to. And so what can happen is you can find a deeper dimension of who you are that transcends really being attached to either pain or pleasure, whatever happens in your life. And so this is going to sound a little bit deep, but the reality is that there's a deeper sense, there's a deeper essence to who you actually are that doesn't need to be attached to good or bad, because these are just dualities in our lives, right? And so you might be thinking, well, wait a second, don't these situations have an impact on my life? How can you say something like that? Well, to a certain extent, sometimes situations can impact your life. They can impact your emotions. And so that's one way to live life. But another way to live life is to take control of your emotions and take responsibility of your emotions. And you can actually learn how to be less reactive, right? You can learn how to notice the patterns that are going on within your body that come out when something happens. Then you can notice when you get triggered, and you can actually use that trigger as a way to let it go. You can use it to say, wait a second, well, I'm being triggered right now. How can I actually let this go? Because clearly I'm being affected by this. But then you can get to a point where you're just not really affected by external situations that much. But then even if you are, you can actually access the underlying peace that is always in the background beyond whatever happens on the external. Because when it comes to being more present to the moment, things are always changing, right? Life is always going to change. Things are always going to happen in your life. Sometimes things aren't necessarily going to go in the way that you want. Sometimes things aren't going to go in the way that we expected, because everything is changing. Literally everything at every single moment is always changing. And so, if you have this false expectation that things aren't going to change and things aren't going to go wrong, then you're going to be setting yourself up for a lot of frustration, because these things are always going to change. Like your job might change, your relationships might change. And so I'm not doing this to be pessimistic. That's just the truth of life, is that everything changes at every single moment, right? Like your thoughts are always changing, your emotions are always changing, the feelings that you have are always changing. Everything's always changing. If you go a little bit deeper into even solid objects, that's a form in life that always changes, right? So everything's always changing. The external circumstances in your life are always changing. And then so when you can learn to accept this truth, eventually you can get to the point, with this understanding that everything changes, there's a deeper essence of who you are that never changes, right? And so this is going to be really hard to communicate, because this is a deeper truth of who you are that is really hard to grasp on the level of the mind. And you can't really grasp this on the level of the mind. This is really an experiential thing that goes deeper to who you actually are, who you actually think you are. The conditioned self, like the ego. When I say the ego, the sense of self that you develop from the thought patterns that you're attached to based on the conditioning of the past and what's going to happen in the future. And so there's a deeper sense of who you actually are that really transcends anything that happens on the outside or the inside of your experience. So there's a deeper sense of something that never changes. So all these things are always changing. We're going to call it form right now. So I'm going to call it form, okay? So form is always changing, okay? Thoughts are always changing. Your emotions are always changing. Your relationships are always going to change. The feelings in your body are always going to change. But then there's one thing that never changes, which is the deeper essence of who you are. In Buddhism, I think they call it the formless, right? Because there's the form, and then there's also the formless. I call it awareness. It's the underlying awareness that is in the background of all form. And when you can begin to connect it as part of yourself, you're going to notice that there's a sense of peace that comes along with whatever it is that you're doing. So then, you can become aware of the sensation of your breathing right now. And so you can feel the sensation of your breath. But then notice how there's not just the sensation of your breath. You don't have to control it, by the way. But there's also the awareness that is behind the breath, right? So there's that sensation of the breath, but then there's that awareness. And so that's who you actually are, right? That awareness, that consciousness, that presence, that formless part of who you are, where the formless gets filled with the form. The form meaning thoughts, feelings, emotions, relationships. And so most people live their life being completely consumed by the outer forms of reality, right? All the things that happen in their life, all the things that are consuming their attention, like the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions and things on the outside changing, like all these things are always going to change. And then so what people don't realize that they always have access to is a deeper dimension to who you are that is just always there. We just don't necessarily realize it because we're too caught up in the forms that are going on in life. Usually the thinking is dominating most of our attention. Usually the thinking is what's taking all the attention, where little do people know that you can actually step out of the thinking and go deeper into the moment, which is the first step to not being affected. Learning just how to do some breathing techniques, learning how to enter the present moment. That's definitely the first step, which is really useful to not being affected by external situations. Just go within, take some deep breaths, do some breathing techniques, step out of the thinking, which is a really good step. But then, there's a deeper way to be completely free with whatever happens. And so this doesn't mean that, sometimes, you're not going to be sad, right? Like if something happens, on the outer world, where, maybe something happens with your family or a job changes and it might get overwhelming. Like, sure, you might get sad. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, reactions don't happen. And so you can actually improve these reactions as a result of being more present. But then, sometimes inevitably these patterns, these reactions are going to come up. But then what I'm telling you is that there's a deeper essence of who you are that transcends all the reactive patterns that you have. Let's say you're super sad, right? And you're really sad and something really negative happened to you, which is a normal part of life to be sad. I'm not saying to not be sad, but then, beneath that sadness, on a deeper level, there is a sense of peace that comes along with that sadness, that sense of I exist, that sense of self that you have, that sense of awareness of just being able to perceive the moment, just having gratitude for simply having the experience of being aware of the moment, just being alive. And so I'm not talking about the moment itself. Like, connecting deeper to the moment is powerful. I'm talking about something even deeper here. It's the formless part of who you are that, so there's the moment and then there's the awareness of the moment. And so this is really hard to communicate because this is what all spiritual teachings usually point to, that a lot of people don't fully understand, which is the formless part of who you are, right? The consciousness where, there's all these things happening in life, but then what's the container that fills all of it? It's almost like there's an empty container that fills, like these forms have the ability to get filled into. Like, what's that container? Like so there's thoughts, there's feelings, there's emotions, there's outer world, there's the outer world, there's people, there's emotions, there's relation, like there's all these things happening. But then what is that thing that has the ability to perceive all of that, right? That's the essence of who you truly are, that sense of awareness. And so connecting to your sense perceptions, like breathing, or just becoming aware of what you're hearing, right? Or just becoming aware of the feelings in your body. Like, this alone can take the attention away from the thinking and into the moment, right? This can already, allow you to not be affected by the external situations, because you're stepping out of the thinking, you're letting go of the story of what's going on in the outside, and you're connecting deeper to the actual essence of the experience, which the experience is not the story. But then if you want to go a little bit deeper, what I'm pointing you to is not just the awareness of these things happening, but the awareness of the awareness, right? The awareness of the awareness. The fact, like, not only are you aware, but you're aware of the fact that you're aware. And so this cannot be grasped on the level of thinking. In fact, you can't actually grasp this at all in any outer form. This is the ability to realize, well, wait a second, not only do I have the ability to become aware of what I'm listening to, what I'm hearing, or the sensation of my breathing, I have the ability to notice that there is that awareness there that is behind all the outer forms that are happening in reality. Okay, so this is something that you're not going to be able to just grasp intellectually. This goes deeper than the level of the mind. This is an experiential thing that you can only grasp on the level of being, on the level of who you actually are, that goes beyond the conditioning of the past and the future, but it's just this eternal presence that always exists right now. And so when you can actually connect to this part of yourself, what's going to happen is the outer things in life are not going to impact you as much. Because regardless of what happens, regardless of the outer circumstances, even your own feelings, even your own emotions, even your own reactive patterns, there's that sense of awareness. There's that sense of peace. And it's not that you're going to be happy all the time. As a result of this, you will become more happy. You will feel higher vibrational emotions, and you will feel happier as a result of connecting to the true essence and recognizing the true nature of who you are. But that doesn't mean you're going to be happy all the time. You will be sometimes. But this means that, regardless of what happens, regardless of the external life situation, you're going to be able to find this underlying peace and this contentness that transcends pain and pleasure in your life. And so Eckhart Tolle even, he speaks about a lot of people that message him that come from prison. They're in prison, they're trapped in a cell, and so the outer reality, and people send him personal messages of gratitude where, they are trapped in a cell, but then they found the essence, they released the internal resistance to the outer reality. They found and experienced the true essence of who they are. They let go of the internal mental resistance to the external reality that's going on. They found that sense of peace that's always there, that sense of awareness, that sense of conscious. Like, the word doesn't matter here. Awareness, consciousness, the seer, the watcher, like, these are just words, but it's like this sense of peace that is, that goes far, it transcends all of the outer forms in reality. And so these people actually, have that sense of peace, which is shocking. And so what happens is they release the internal resistance to the outer reality. And then what usually ends up happening, based on what Eckhart Tolle says, is that they end up leaving prison a year later, or very soon after that they release the internal resistance. The outer reality will naturally kind of flow in a way that's easier too, because when we internally resist the external reality, we tend to, persist that kind of reality happening in our lives. We tend to create more of that. But then when you can learn how to become aware of those patterns, find that sense of awareness that transcends all these things that are going on, you find that sense of peace, what can happen is the outer reality will show a reflection of that too, because when you release the internal resistance, the outer reality also changes in your life. And so this is a really, really deep topic, but the core of this really is not only to step out of the thinking in your mind, but to actually go deeper into the essence of who you truly actually are by doing things like meditation or self-inquiry or contemplation, and just going a little bit deeper and like who you actually are, like that transcends the conditioning of the past. And so the more you do this, the more you enter deeply into the present moment, and you find that sense of awareness that transcends outer reality or inner reality too, like inner, outer, happy, sad, all these dualities. There's a deeper sense of awareness that goes, that is always in the background. When you can access this, the outer realities in your life are not going to impact you as much. You're going to have that sense of peace, that sense of security, that sense of everything's okay regardless of what happens. And so this doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to take action. This actually means more effective action. This is why the outer reality changes when you begin to access as part of who you are. Because when you can access as part of who you are, you're going to have more efficient action. You're going to be totally invested in what you're doing. And you're not going to be caught up in the patterns that are normally consuming all your attention, the reactions to the external, okay? So this goes really deep. If you want to go a little bit deeper into this, then consider hitting that website and applying for a free consultation, because I do powerful one-on-one sessions. That's all I have for you today. If you like this kind of content, then consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell, because I post a video every single day. Have yourself a great day, and see you in the next video.